Marcus Jackson's boot pressed down on Cole Haven's throat, slow and steady, the way a man closes a door he never wanted to open. 3 other bodies lay groaning in the gravel around him, blood on his knuckles, none of it his. "I gave you a final warning," Marcus said quietly. "You should have listened." The contractor under his boot couldn't speak, only wheeze. And the strangest part, Marcus wasn't even breathing hard. But here's what nobody on that training field knew yet. Not the recruits, not the instructors watching from the tower, not even Cole. The single dad they'd mocked all morning wasn't just some washed-up veteran picking up a paycheck. He was a ghost. And somebody had been hunting that ghost for 11 years. Before we go further, drop a comment and tell me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. And if stories about quiet men with loud pasts are your thing, hit that subscribe button. Stay with me. You're not gonna want to miss what comes next. The Texas sun came up hard that morning, the kind of heat that settles into a man's shoulders before he's even had his coffee. Marcus Jackson stood by the chain-link fence at the edge of the Briarwood Tactical Training Facility, lunch pail in one hand, hard hat tucked under his arm, and watched the recruits file out of the barracks for their morning formation. He wasn't one of them. He never had been, far as anyone here knew. 43 years old, 6'1", sandy blonde hair gone a little gray at the temples, blue eyes that had seen too much and said too little. A faded Carhartt jacket over a plain gray shirt. Steel-toed boots scuffed from 12 months of honest work. To anybody glancing his way, Marcus Jackson was just another contract maintenance man, the guy who fixed the busted shooting range targets, repainted the obstacle course rigging, and made sure the diesel generators hummed when the power dipped. He liked it that way. "Mornin', Marcus." Big Earl, the supply foreman, rolled past on a golf cart loaded with sandbags. "You see that new batch of contractors come in last night?" "Saw the trucks." "Loud bunch." "They usually are." Earl chuckled. "You take care, brother. Don't let 'em run you over." Marcus gave him a small nod, the kind that wasn't really an answer, and walked on toward the equipment shed. His son's school picture sat in his wallet, pressed against his hip. Tyler, 8 years old, missing a front tooth, grinning like the world hadn't taught him anything bad yet. Marcus aimed to keep it that way. 3 years ago, he'd buried Tyler's mother. Cancer. 36 years old and gone in 7 months. He'd stood at her grave in his dress blues and made a promise to her, not out loud, because there were too many people there for that, but in the silence between his ribs. "I'll raise him right. I'll be there. I won't disappear into the work the way I used to." So he'd hung up the trident, walked out of the SEAL teams after 15 years, 2 combat tours in Iraq, 3 in Afghanistan, and a couple of others in places that didn't have names you'd find on a map. He took the maintenance gig at Briarwood because it paid steady, the hours were predictable, and Tyler's school was 12 minutes down the road. That was enough. That had to be enough. Most days it was. He was halfway across the gravel yard when he heard the laughter. "Michel?" A cluster of men in tactical pants and tight black t-shirts, 6 of them by his count, stood near the armory, loading bay, smoking cigarettes. They weren't supposed to be smoking and talking louder than they needed to. The biggest of them, a slab-shouldered kid with a high and tight, and a nose that looked like it had been broken twice, was holding court. "I'm telling you, the SEALs ain't what they used to be," the big one was saying. "My cousin tried out for Bud/S. Said half the guys ringing the bell now are softer than my grandma's biscuits." His buddies laughed on cue. Marcus didn't slow down. He didn't speed up either. He just walked his line-eyes forward jacket zipper, catching a glint of sun. That's when the leader saw him. Hey, maintenance." Marcus kept walking. "I'm talking to you, old-timer." And he stopped, not because he wanted to, because a man who walks away from a direct call gets a reputation, and a reputation is the last thing he needed in a place like this. He turned slow, lunch pail still in his left hand. The leader sauntered over. Up close, Marcus could read the patch on his shirt, Havens C. Tier 1, Private Security. Cole Havens. Marcus had heard the name in the break room. New contractor outfit. Hot Shots. The kind of company that hired guys who washed out of selection and let them tell the world they were former operators. "You work here?" Cole asked. "Yes, sir." "Sir?" Cole grinned at his buddies. "You hear that, sir? I like this guy already." He turned back to Marcus. "What's your name, friend?" "Jackson." "Jackson what?" "Marcus Jackson." "Well, Marcus Jackson." Cole flicked his cigarette into the gravel at Marcus's boot. "I noticed you've been hanging around the live fire range yesterday afternoon." "You watching us?" "I was fixing the target carriage on lane 4. "Uh-huh. And before that?" "Replacing the bulb in the spotter's booth." Cole nodded like he was a detective who'd just cracked a case. "See, the thing is, my guys feel like maybe you're a little too interested in our drills. And we don't really love some janitor type studying our techniques. You get me?" Marcus didn't answer. A second man stepped up beside Cole, shorter, wiry, dark hair, a smirk that looked like it had been carved into his face at birth. The shirt said, "Lopez." "He's not deaf, is he?" Lopez said. "Maybe he's just slow." "Nah, he heard me," Cole said. "Didn't you, Marcus?" "I heard you. And I'm gonna get to my work now." Marcus turned to leave. Cole stepped sideways, not quite blocking him, but close enough to make the point. Hold on. Don't be like that. We're just having a conversation man to man. You don't gotta be sensitive." Marcus stopped again. He let out a slow breath through his nose. He could feel the weight of his own pulse, that old familiar drumbeat behind the ribs, the one he'd spent 3 years teaching himself to ignore. Tyler's school picture. Tyler's missing tooth. Tyler waiting at the bus stop at 3:15. "I'm not being sensitive," Marcus said, voice level. "I just got work to do." "What kind of work?" "Generator on the South Berms running rough. Gotta swap the air filter." "A real American hero," Lopez muttered, and the others laughed. Marcus's jaw moved just a little, the kind of motion you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. "You ever serve Marcus?" Cole asked. Some, Cole repeated, savoring it. "What's some mean, like you do 4 years pushing paper at Fort Bragg or something?" "Something like that." "See, I figured." Cole nodded slowly. "I figured. Because guys who actually did something, guys like me and my boys here, we got a way of carrying ourselves. You ever notice that? It's like a presence. You walk into a room, people know. They feel it." He spread his arms. "You ain't got that, Marcus. No offense." "None taken." "He says none taken," Lopez said. "I'd be taking some personally." "Taken." Marcus shifted the lunch pail to his other hand. It was a small movement. It looked like nothing. But it freed up his strong side, and the part of him he'd buried 3 years ago noted that automatically, without permission. He pushed it back down. "Boys," he said quietly, "I don't want any trouble. I just want to do my job and pick my kid up from school. That's the whole day for me." That was a mistake. He saw it the second the words left his mouth, the slight twitch at the corner of Cole's eye, the way the smirk on Lopez's face deepened. He'd given them a thread, and they were the kind of men who liked to pull threads. "You got a kid," Cole said. "I do." "Boy or girl?" "Don't see how that's your business." "Aw, come on. We're just being friendly. What's his name?" Marcus didn't answer. "Daddy don't want to say." Lopez whistled low. "Maybe Daddy's worried somebody might come visit the schoolyard, huh?" Something inside Marcus went very, very still. It wasn't anger. Anger was loud. This was the opposite. This was the room going quiet right before the door opens. This was the breath you don't take. This was the part of him he'd built a fence around 3 years ago, and Lopez had just rattled the gate. He looked Lopez in the eye for the first time. Really looked at him. Lopez's smirk faltered, just for a half second. He didn't know why, But something in his lizard brain told him to take a half step back. He didn't take it. Pride wouldn't let him. But the impulse had been there, and Marcus had seen it. "Son," Marcus said softly, "you don't want to talk about my boy." "Or what?" Cole cut in. "What are you gonna do, Maintenance Marcus? You gonna swing that lunch pail at me?" "I'm gonna walk away. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go fix my generator and you boys are gonna go run your drills and we're all gonna pretend this conversation didn't happen. And if we don't pretend—" Marcus didn't answer right away. He looked past Cole's shoulder at the long row of recruits jogging in formation in the distance, at the watchtower, at the flagpole snapping in the morning wind. He looked at all of it, and then back at Cole. "Then I'm giving you a final warning," he said. "One time. Walk away." The silence that followed lasted maybe 2 seconds, but every one of those 6 men felt it. Then Cole laughed. It was a real laugh, thrown back from the belly, the kind of laugh a man uses to tell his friends they don't need to be nervous even when they kind of are. He clapped Lopez on the shoulder. "You hear that final warning? Oh, that's good. That's good." He stepped closer to Marcus. Close enough that Marcus could smell the cigarette and the cheap cologne underneath it. "Listen to me, old man. I don't know what kind of John Wayne fantasy you got cooking in your head, but I'm gonna do you a favor. I'm gonna let you walk back to that generator, and tomorrow when you come into work, you're gonna pick a different route across the yard, one that doesn't take you anywhere near my guys. You feel me?" Marcus didn't move. "Say you feel me, Marcus." Marcus held his eyes. The thing about Cole Havens was that he'd been getting away with this his whole life. He was big, he was loud, he had a crew, and the world had taught him that men like Marcus, quiet men, polite men with lunch pails folded when you pushed them. It was a lesson the world kept teaching him because he kept passing the test. He was about to fail it for the first time. "I said," Cole repeated, and this time he poked a thick finger into Marcus's chest. "Say you feel me." The finger landed. Marcus looked down at it, then up at Cole. "Take your hand off me, son." "Or what?" Behind Cole, Lopez chuckled and started to circle. The other 4 spread out in a loose half-moon, not consciously, not professionally, but the way a pack of dogs spreads out when they think they've cornered something. Marcus clocked every angle without moving his head. Strong side, weak side, blind side. The fence at his back. The gravel under his boots loose on top, packed underneath. The lunch pail, which he could swing or drop. Cole's right hand, which had drifted to the pistol on his hip even though he probably didn't realize it yet. The body knows things the mouth hasn't admitted. "Cole." Marcus's voice was almost gentle now. "I'm gonna say this one time, and I want you to really hear it. I have a son who's 8 years old. His mother is dead. I'm all he's got. So whatever this is, whatever game you think we're playing right now, you need to walk it back. Because if you don't, we're not gonna be having a conversation anymore." For a moment, just a moment, Cole almost listened. You could see it on his face. Some animal in the back of his skull was sniffing the air and not liking what it smelled. The quiet man wasn't acting like the quiet men were supposed to act. The quiet man was looking at him the way a wolf looks at a stray dog. But Cole had an audience. And Cole had never in his entire life walked anything back in front of an audience. So he smiled wide and slow. "Lopez," he said without taking his eyes off Marcus. "Go ahead and educate our maintenance friend here on what happens when he disrespects Tier 1. Lopez moved, and the part of Marcus Jackson that had been buried for 3 years came up out of the ground like it had never left. What happened in the next 11 seconds, and yes 11, was the exact count, because some part of Marcus's brain was still keeping time the way it had been trained to, was something the recruits up at the formation field would still be talking about a decade later, when most of them had gone gray, and their grandkids asked them about the old days at Briarwood. Maddie. Lopez came in throwing a haymaker. A big looping right hand telegraphed from a mile away the kind of punch you throw when you've never been in a fight that mattered. Marcus didn't even bother to slip it. He stepped into it inside the arc, where the punch had no power left, caught Lopez's wrist with his left hand, and used the man's own momentum to spin him a quarter turn. His right elbow came up under Lopez's chin, in a short, brutal, almost lazy-looking arc. Lopez's head snapped back. His knees turned to wet rope. He hit the gravel face first and didn't move. 1 second. The man to Lopez's left charged. Marcus stepped sideways, dropped the lunch pail, it clattered against the gravel, and a thermos rolled out and hooked the man's lead leg with his boot. The man went down hard. Marcus didn't follow. He didn't need to. He pivoted, already reading the next threat. 3 seconds. 2 more came at once, smart enough to flank him. Marcus slipped between them so fast that they actually ran into each other. While they were tangled, he put a palm strike into the temple of the one on his right, not full power, because full power kills a man, and Marcus had decided about 4 seconds ago that he wasn't here to kill anybody, and the man dropped sideways like somebody had cut his strings. The second one tried to wrestle him from behind, got his arm around Marcus's throat, and discovered that Marcus had been waiting for exactly that. A sharp drop of the hips, an elbow into the ribs, a twist of the wrist, and the man was airborne. He landed on his back with a sound like a sack of wet laundry. He did not get up. 7 seconds. The fifth man was the smart one. He saw the math. He froze. Marcus looked at him. "Sit down." He sat down. 8 seconds. Which left Cole? Cole had his hand on his pistol now, and he had it halfway out of the holster, but his eyes were too wide and his fingers were too slow. The body believes what the eyes show it, and what Cole's eyes had just shown him was 4 of his men on the ground in less time than it takes to tie a boot. Marcus crossed the distance in 2 steps. His right hand closed over Cole's wrist before the pistol cleared leather. His left hand came up under Cole's elbow. Left hand came up under Cole's elbow. He didn't break the arm, he had the angle for it easy, but he didn't take it. He just rotated. Cole's wrist bent the wrong way. Cole made a high surprise sound that wasn't quite a word. The pistol fell into the gravel. Marcus hooked Cole's ankle with his boot. Cole went down on his back. 11 seconds. And then it was quiet. The wind moved through the gravel yard. Somewhere a long way off, a recruit's whistle blew, the formation captain calling cadence, completely unaware. A cigarette still lit rolled in a slow circle near Lopez's slack hand. Marcus stood over Cole Havens with his boot resting, not pressing, just resting on the man's throat. He wasn't winded, he wasn't even warm. His blue eyes were calm in a way that was somehow worse than rage. "I gave you a final warning," he said quietly. "You should have listened." Cole tried to speak, couldn't. Marcus took his boot off. He bent down, picked up Cole's pistol, dropped the magazine into his palm, racked the slide to clear the chamber, caught the round out of the air, and laid the empty weapon on Cole's chest. He did all of this without ever looking at the gun. His eyes stayed on Cole's face the whole time. "You don't draw a weapon on a man unless you mean to use it," he said. "And you don't mean to use it on me. Trust me on that." Then he straightened up, picked up his lunch pail, rescued the thermos from the gravel, brushed himself off, and started walking toward the south berm. Behind him, footsteps came running. Boots on gravel. A lot of them. He didn't look back. He'd taken about 20 steps when a voice cut across the yard, sharp and trained and impossible to ignore. "Jackson, stop." Marcus stopped. He recognized the voice before he turned around. He'd hoped he was wrong. He wasn't. The man jogging toward him across the gravel was 60 years old. Gray-haired, ramrod straight, in a pressed instructor's uniform with a name tape that read Cross. Lieutenant Commander David Cross, U.S. Navy, retired. Marcus's old commanding officer. The man who had pinned the trident on his chest in 2008, and the man who had signed his discharge papers in 2023. Marcus had not seen him in 3 years. Cross stopped in front of him. He looked past Marcus at the wreckage on the gravel. Lopez faced down 2 more, groaning, the smart one still sitting cross-legged like a kindergartner at story time, and Cole Havens flat on his back, staring at the sky. Then he looked at Marcus. And the strangest thing happened. He smiled. It wasn't a big smile. It wasn't friendly exactly. It was the smile of a man who had just had something confirmed that he'd been wondering about for a long, long time. "Marcus," Cross said quietly, "we need to talk." Marcus shifted his lunch pail to the other hand. "Sir," he said, "I gotta pick my boy up at 3:15. "I know you do." Cross's smile didn't move. "And you will. But first, you and I are going to walk over to that admin office, and we are going to have a conversation. Because what just happened here," he tilted his head toward the bodies on the ground, "was not an accident. And I think deep down, you already know that." Marcus didn't answer. He looked at his old commanding officer, and his old commanding officer looked back at him, and the morning sun came down hard on both of them. Somewhere across the yard, the recruit's whistle blew again. Marcus Jackson took a long breath, the first real one he'd taken in 3 years. And then, without a word, he started walking toward the admin office. The walk to the admin office was the longest 200 yards Marcus Jackson had taken in 3 years. He kept his eyes forward. He could feel the recruits in the distance starting to notice the formation breaking ranks, heads turning, the cadence of the morning falling apart as word spread. Somebody was already on a radio. Somebody else was running toward Coal Havens with a med kit. None of it was Marcus's problem anymore. He'd done what he'd done. The cleanup belonged to other men. Cross walked beside him, half a step back, the way a senior officer walks when he doesn't want the conversation to start yet. "Generator on the South Berm's gonna stay rough another day," Marcus said finally. "It'll keep. Earl's gonna ask." "Earl's not gonna ask anything. Earl's gonna do exactly what I tell him to do, same as he's done for 11 years. Marcus glanced sideways. "Earl works for you. Earl works for the facility, Marcus, and I run the facility. Did you really not know that?" "I knew the name on the building was Cross Tactical. I figured it was a coincidence." Cross made a small sound that wasn't quite a laugh. "Nothing about you being here is a coincidence, son. Not one single thing. But we'll get to that." They reached the admin building, a low, flat-roofed structure painted the color of old sand. Cross held the door open. Marcus walked in. The receptionist, a young woman with a phone pressed to her ear, took one look at Cross and hung up without saying goodbye. "Hold my calls, Patricia." "Yes, sir." "And get somebody from medical out to the gravel yard. Tell them Mr. Havens may have a sprained wrist and Mr. Lopez may have a concussion. Tell them not to ask questions." "Yes, sir." Cross led Marcus down a short hallway to a corner office. He shut the door behind them. The blinds were already half drawn. The walls were plain, except for a single framed photograph behind the desk. A black and white shot of 7 men in dive gear, standing on the deck of a boat, somewhere warm and a long time ago. Marcus didn't look at it. He didn't need to. He knew which one was him. "Sit down, Marcus." "I'd rather stand, sir." "Sit down anyway." Marcus sat. Cross didn't sit. He went around the desk, opened a drawer, pulled out a manila folder, and set it on the blotter. He didn't open it. He just rested 2 fingers on top of it and looked at Marcus. "I'm going to ask you a question," Cross said. "And I want you to answer it honest. No quiet man routine. No yes sir, no sir. Just an answer." "Okay." "How long have you known this was a setup?" Marcus didn't blink. "About 4 seconds after Lopez stepped forward." "Yeah." Cross nodded slowly. "And you went along with it anyway." "I didn't go along with anything. They put hands on me. I responded." "You responded with 11 seconds of clinical work, son. You disarmed a man without breaking his wrist. You put down 4 full-grown contractors, and you did it without putting any of them in the hospital. That's not a response. That's a demonstration." "I had a kid to pick up at 3:15. I needed it to be quick." "No." For the first time, Cross actually laughed, a single short bark of it surprised out of him. God almighty, Marcus, you haven't changed a bit. Yes, I have, sir. I changed a lot. The laugh faded. Cross looked at him for a long moment. Yeah, he said quietly. I guess you did. He pulled out the chair behind the desk and finally sat down. He put both his hands flat on the folder. He looked older sitting down than he had standing up. I'm going to tell you the truth now, Cross said, and I owe you an apology before I start. So, I'm sorry. For what? For the last 12 months. Marcus's jaw tightened. He didn't say anything. You took this maintenance job a year ago, Cross said. You came in through a temp service, you filled out the paperwork under your own name, you passed the background check. And the second your application crossed Patricia's desk, she flagged it for me. Because I'd had a watch on your name in our system for 3 years. Ever since you walked out of Coronado. Why? Because I knew you'd surface somewhere eventually, and I wanted to know where. That's not an answer, sir. I know it's not. I'm getting there. Cross took a breath. When I saw you'd applied to Briarwood, I had a choice to make. I could have called you up, told you who owned the place, asked you over for coffee. Old commander, old friend, here's a job, glad to have you. But I didn't do that. I let HR process you like any other contract worker. I told Earl to keep his mouth shut. I told Patricia the same. And for 12 months, I have watched you fix our generators and repaint our targets and eat your sandwich on that bench by the south fence at exactly 12:15 every single day. You've been watching me eat lunch. Not personally, but yes. There's been eyes on you since the day you walked in. Marcus's hands closed slowly on the arms of the chair. Sir, he said very evenly, you want to tell me why? Because I needed to know who you were now. You knew who I was. I knew who you used to be. That's a different man. The man I trained, the man who ran with my unit for 15 years, that man could have handled 6 contractors before breakfast and not lost a wink of sleep over it. But the man who put in his papers in 2023, the man who buried his wife and walked away from the teams to raise an 8-year-old by himself. I didn't know that man. Nobody did. You went dark, Marcus. Not in a bad way, in a real way. You disappeared into being a father, and you did it so completely that for 3 years, not a single one of us could find a reason to call you. And I respected that. I respected the hell out of it. But I needed to know when the time came whether the operator was still in there, or whether you'd finally and truly hung him up. And so you sent Cole Havens at me. That. Cole Havens was already here. Tier 1 signed a 6-month contract in March. They were already obnoxious, already pushing the rules. I was already going to fire them at the end of the quarter. Cross paused. I didn't send them at you, Marcus. I just stopped redirecting them. I let the morning play out. I told the tower to keep their hands off the radio. I told the formation captain to keep his recruits busy on the south field. And I waited to see what you'd do. You used a man's job. A man with a kid. I did. You let those boys threaten my son. They didn't threaten. Lopez talked about my kid's schoolyard, sir. Marcus's voice didn't rise. It went lower. You want to call that something other than a threat, you go right ahead. But where I'm sitting, that's a threat. And you let it happen so you could see what I'd do. Cross was quiet. Yes, he said finally. I did. And if you want to walk out of this office right now and never come back, I will not stop you. I will sign your separation papers myself. I will write you a reference letter that says whatever you want it to say, and I will mail your last paycheck to whatever address you give me. You have my word on that. Marcus didn't move. The office was very quiet. Somewhere in the building a phone rang and went unanswered. Out the window, far across the gravel, 2 men in medic uniforms were helping Cole Havens to his feet. Marcus watched them for a moment. Then he looked back at Cross. Why? He said. Why now? Why any of it? Cross opened the folder. He turned it around so it faced Marcus and slid it across the desk. The top sheet was the photograph. Black and white, slightly grainy, taken from a distance with a long lens. A man in a dark coat getting out of a car in front of a building Marcus didn't recognize. Middle-aged, heavy-set. A face Marcus had not seen in 11 years and had hoped in the cleaner parts of his soul to never see again. He didn't pick the photo up. He didn't need to. "Sir," he said, and his voice had gone strange. "Where was this taken?" "Houston, 6 weeks ago. Houston, Texas." Houston, Texas, River Oaks neighborhood. He came in through Mexico City on a Venezuelan passport that says his name is Hector Almeida. He checked into a private medical clinic for 3 nights and then he disappeared. We picked him up again last week in San Antonio. We lost him again Tuesday. Marcus closed his eyes for a second, just one. "It's not him." "It's him, Marcus." "It's not him. We watched him die. I watched him die. You watched a man die. We never had the body. You know we never had the body. The whole compound came down on top of him. The drone footage. The drone footage showed a structure collapse. It did not show a corpse. We searched that rubble for 9 days, son, and you and I both know what we found and what we didn't." Marcus opened his eyes. He looked at the photograph again. The man in the dark coat. The way he held his right shoulder high, stiff the old shrapnel injury he'd never been able to hide. The faint scar that ran from the corner of his mouth down into his collar. It was him. "Sir." Marcus's voice was very controlled. "I left the teams to raise my son. I know. I made a promise to my wife at her grave. I know that too. You don't get to come back into my life with a folder and ask me to break it. I'm not asking you to break it." "Then what are you asking me?" Cross leaned forward. "I'm asking you to listen for 10 more minutes. After that you can walk out of here, and I will never knock on your door again. You have my word as a sailor." Marcus didn't say yes, he didn't say no. He just sat there. Cross took that as permission. 3 years ago, he said, "When you put in your papers the world looked one way. Almeida, and we'll keep calling him that. Since we don't have a better name on the books, Almeida was dead." The network he ran was scattered. The men who'd hunted you and your team across 2 continents were either in the ground or in cages, and the ones still walking around weren't worth losing sleep over. I signed your discharge in good conscience. I went home. I poured myself a bourbon. I told my wife that one of the best men I ever knew was going to go raise his boy. And I meant it. I meant every word. What changed? 6 months ago, somebody started asking questions about your team. Marcus's hands closed tighter on the chair. "What kind of questions?" "The kind you ask when you're putting a list together. Names, last known locations, family, children." The word landed in the room like a dropped tool. "Now hold on," Cross said quickly, lifting a hand. "Hold on. I am not telling you your son is in danger. I want to be clear about that. Tyler has had eyes on him, friendly eyes, since the day this started. There is a sheriff's deputy in his school's parking lot every afternoon at 2:50. There is a retired master chief living 3 doors down from your house, who you've waved at exactly twice, and who has cameras on every approach to your driveway. There is a tracker in the bumper of the school bus. Your boy is the most surveilled 8-year-old in the state of Texas, and he doesn't know a thing about it, and that is exactly how it's going to stay." Marcus stared at him. "You put protection on my son," he said slowly, "and you didn't tell me." "I didn't tell you because if I had told you, you would have done one of 2 things. You would have either grabbed Tyler and run, and I'm not saying that's wrong, but it would have taken him out of school, out of his routine, out of his life, or you would have come to me and asked for a weapon and a name, and you would have gone to work. And 6 months ago, Marcus, you weren't ready for that. Not the man I was watching eat his sandwich at 12:15 every day. That man had earned 3 years of peace, and I was going to let him keep it for as long as I could. Oh, and now. Cross tapped the photograph. Now he's in Texas. Now he's 200 miles from your boy. Now I do not have the luxury of letting you keep your peace. I am sorry, Marcus. I would give a great deal not to be the man sitting across from you right now. But I am the man, and you are the man, and that is the man, and we are out of time." For a long moment, Marcus didn't speak. He looked at the photograph. He looked at the framed picture on the wall, the one he hadn't wanted to see. The 7 men on the boat, 11 years younger. Sunburned and grinning with the particular kind of grin that only comes off a man's face when he's just done something he can't talk about and lived through it. 3 of those 7 men were dead now. 2 had died in the operation that was supposed to have killed Almeida. The 3rd had died 18 months later in a car accident in Virginia that Marcus had never quite been able to convince himself was actually an accident. Out of the 7, 4 were still alive. He was one of them. "Sir," he said, "the other 3. "Hennessy is in Montana. Wife, 2 daughters, ages 11 and 7. He runs a fly fishing outfit. He doesn't know yet. You haven't told him?" "I'm telling him tomorrow morning in person. I owe him that the same as I owe it to you." "And Tate?" "Tate's in Maine. He knows. He's been working with me on this for 2 months. "And Reyes?" A pause. "Reyes is the reason we know about Houston, Marcus." Marcus closed his eyes again. Longer this time. "Reyes," he said. "Of course Reyes. He never really retired. You know that." "I know. He's been chasing this ghost for 11 years. He's the one who flagged the entry through Mexico City. He's the one who put a man on the clinic in River Oaks. He came to me a month ago and laid out everything you just looked at, and he said 3 words to me. He said, 'Get Marcus ready.' And I said, 'I've been getting Marcus ready for a year.' And he said, 'Then you better hope it took.'" Marcus opened his eyes. "This morning," he said. "The contractors, Lopez, the threat about my boy. That was the test. That was the test. And if I'd walked away, then I would have signed your separation papers this afternoon, and I would have flown to Maine tonight, and Tate and Hennessy and Reyes and I would have handled this without you. And I would have stood up at your boy's high school graduation in 10 years, and I would have shaken your hand, and I never would have told you any of this. You have my word on that too. And if I'd killed one of them—" Cross actually smiled faintly. "You weren't going to kill one of them, Marcus. I knew that the second you set the lunch pail down instead of swinging it. That's why I let it run." Marcus looked at him for a long time. "Sir," he said, "I have one question, and then I'll give you my answer." "Ask it." "My son, if I say yes, if I do this, what happens to him? Right now today, while I'm sitting in this chair—" Cross didn't hesitate. "Tyler stays in his school. Tyler stays in his bed. Tyler stays in his routine. We do not pull him out. We do not tell him anything. We do not change one single visible thing about his life. The protection that has been on him for 6 months stays on him. 2 more bodies get added to it as of tonight. You will pick him up at 3:15 today. You will help him with his math homework tonight. You will make him spaghetti, or whatever you make him on Tuesdays. Grilled cheese. You will make him grilled cheese, and you will tuck him in at 8:30, and you will read him whatever chapter you're on, of whatever book you're reading him, and tomorrow morning you will put him on the bus, and then and only then will you and I sit down and start the work. Your son does not lose a single hour of his father. That is the deal, or there is no deal. I will not ask you to be anything less than the dad you promised that woman you would be. Do you understand me?" Marcus's jaw moved. He didn't answer right away. "What's the chapter?" Cross said quietly. "What? What's the chapter you're reading him?" Marcus blinked. The question was so domestic, so completely out of place in the room they were sitting in, that for a second he couldn't make sense of it. "Where the red fern grows," he said. "We're about halfway. The dogs just treed their first coon." Cross nodded slowly. He didn't say anything for a moment. "My boys read that one," he said. "Both of them. I read it to them." My older one cried at the end. My younger one pretended he didn't, but he did. Tyler's gonna cry. Yeah, he is. He's a soft kid. Soft is good, Marcus. Soft is what we were fighting for. Something in Marcus's chest moved that hadn't moved in 3 years. He didn't let it onto his face. Sir, he said, I need to think. How long? Till tomorrow morning. I want to look at my boy across the table tonight, and I want to think while I'm looking at him. And then I'll give you my answer. That's fair. And one more thing. Name it. You ever pull a stunt like this morning on me again? You ever use my job, my name, my routine to test me without telling me? And the answer is no. The answer is no for the rest of my life. Are we clear, sir? Cross looked at him. We're clear, Marcus. Good. Marcus stood up. He didn't shake Cross's hand. He picked up his lunch pail from the floor where he'd set it. He turned to the door. Marcus. He stopped, hand on the knob. For what it's worth, Cross said. This morning, out there. That was the cleanest piece of close quarters work I have seen in a decade. You have not lost a single step, not one. Marcus didn't turn around. That's the part that scares me, sir, he said. And then he opened the door and walked out. When Patricia at the front desk did not look up as he passed. The phone was ringing again, and this time she answered it. The sun was higher now, hotter, and the gravel yard was almost empty. The contractors were gone. Somebody had loaded them into a van and driven them away, probably to medical, probably to a conversation with a lawyer somewhere. The recruits were back on the south field, running their drills completely unaware that the ground had moved under all of them this morning. Marcus walked to his truck. He set the lunch pail on the passenger seat. He sat behind the wheel for a long time without starting the engine. He took out his wallet. He slid out the school picture of Tyler, the missing front tooth, the grin, the 8-year-old who did not know that his father had once spent 15 years hunting men in the dark, and who did not know that a man his father had been told was dead was breathing air in Texas right now 200 miles up the highway. Marcus held the picture in both hands. Buddy, he said very quietly to no one. Daddy might have to go back to work for a little while. He put the picture back in his wallet. He started the engine. He had a generator to fix a south berm to walk and a son to pick up at 3:15. The rest could wait until tomorrow. But not 1 minute longer than that. The drive to Tyler's school took 12 minutes on a good day, and Marcus made it in 11 without realizing he was doing it. He pulled into the carpool line at 3:08, 7 minutes early, and sat with his hands resting on the wheel and his eyes on the front doors of Briarwood Elementary. He'd done this drive 500 times. He'd never once looked at the parking lot the way he was looking at it now. There was a sheriff's cruiser in the visitor's slot engine running deputy behind the wheel pretending to do paperwork. Marcus had seen that cruiser in this lot every afternoon for the past 6 months and had assumed it was the school resource officer running the carpool. It wasn't. The school resource officer drove a white Ford Explorer with a stripe on it, and that one was parked on the other side of the building, where it always was. Mounted 2 cars ahead of Marcus, a silver pickup he didn't recognize, plates from out of county. Driver was a man in his 50s. Ball cap pulled low, sipping coffee from a thermos, and not looking at his phone the way every other parent in the line was. Marcus watched him for 10 seconds, and made him for retired military before he even saw the way the man's eyes moved across the rear view. 3 doors down on the residential street that ran behind the school, a panel van. White, no markings, tinted side windows. Marcus had passed it on the way in and hadn't thought twice about it. Now he thought about it. Now he thought about the angle of the side mirror, which had been adjusted to look back along the carpool line, instead of ahead the way a parked van's mirror should be. Cross hadn't been kidding. Tyler's bus was parked in its usual spot to the right of the front doors. The driver, a heavy-set woman named Linda, who'd had the route for 9 years, was leaning against the front bumper with a cigarette she wasn't supposed to be smoking. Marcus had waved at Linda twice a week for a year. He'd never asked her last name. He wondered now if Linda was Linda. He wondered if the bumper she was leaning on was the one with the tracker in it, or if there was a second one he hadn't been told about. He wondered how much of his life exactly had been quietly rearranged around him while he'd been worrying about the South Berm generator and grilled cheese on Tuesdays. The bell rang at 3:15. The doors opened, and the first wave of kids came out, kindergartners, with their little backpacks. Then the first graders, then second. And then Marcus saw him. Tyler. Sandy blonde hair like his daddy's. The cowlick on the back. His mother had never been able to flatten down a Texas Rangers t-shirt that was getting too small in the shoulders, a Spider-Man backpack that was nearly as big as he was. He was talking to another boy as he walked, hands moving, telling some story that involved a lot of, and he was laughing. Marcus's chest did something it hadn't done since the morning of his wife's funeral. He rolled the window down. "Tyler, Bud." The boy's head came up. The grin on his face widened. "Dad." Tyler ran. He always ran. He hit the side of the truck at full speed, and Marcus reached across and opened the passenger door, and Tyler scrambled up into the seat and threw his backpack into the footwell and was already talking before his butt hit the cushion. Dad, guess what? Guess what? Marcus T. brought a bearded dragon to show and tell, an actual bearded dragon. His name is Hercules and Mrs. Patterson. Let me hold him for a whole minute, and he didn't bite me or nothing. Anything. And Marcus T. said he might let me come over and hold him again on Saturday, if it's okay with you, and his mom said it's okay with her. If it's okay with you, can it be okay with you? Please, Dad. Please. Marcus reached over and ruffled the cowlick. He left his hand there a second longer than he usually did. Tyler didn't notice. "We'll see, Bud." That means yes. That means we'll see. You always say we'll see, and it always means yes. Buckle up. Yes, sir. The seatbelt clicked. Marcus put the truck in gear and pulled out of the carpool line. As he passed the silver pickup, the driver in the ball cap glanced at him, once 2 seconds of eye contact, and gave him the smallest nod. Marcus returned it. Neither one of them changed expression. Tyler didn't see any of it. Tyler was rummaging in his backpack for a folded piece of construction paper. "I made you something." "Yeah." "It's for your work locker." "I don't have a work locker, Bud." "Then for your truck. Here, don't look at it while you're driving. Mom said you should never look at things while you're driving." That stopped Marcus's hand halfway to the paper. Tyler said, Mom said about once a month, with no warning the way kids do, pulling her up out of the dirt of memory, like she'd just walked out of the kitchen. Marcus had learned to keep his face still when it happened. He kept it still now. "Your mom was right about a lot of things, Bud." "I know. I'll look at it when we get home." "Okay." They drove. Tyler told him about lunch chicken nuggets, but the kind with the weird sauce, not the regular kind, and about how a fourth grader named Brandon had gotten in trouble for saying a bad word at recess, and about how the librarian had let him check out 2 books instead of 1 because he'd finished the first one in 3 days. Marcus listened. Marcus said, "Uh-huh," and "no kidding," and "you don't say" in all the right places, and his eyes never stopped moving rear-view side mirror. The cars at the 4-way stop, the gray sedan that turned left when he turned right and didn't reappear, the pickup 3 cars back that did reappear and then turned off after 2 blocks. The woman walking a golden retriever on the corner of Maple and 6th, who was the same woman who walked a golden retriever on the corner of Maple and 6th every afternoon at 3:22. Or was she? Marcus had never looked closely enough at the woman to know what she actually looked like. He looked now. Mid-50s, visor, wraparound sunglasses, tracksuit. The dog was real. The leash was real. Her right hand was in the pocket of the track jacket, which on a hot Texas afternoon was an interesting place for a hand to be. Friendly Eyes Cross had said, There is a sheriff's deputy in the parking lot every afternoon at 2:50. Friendly eyes had been all around him for 6 months, and he had not seen one of them. Dad. Yeah, bud. You're being quiet. Am I? Yeah, you're doing the thing. What thing? The thing where you say uh-huh, but you're not really listening. Marcus looked over at his son. Tyler was watching him with that particular expression 8-year-olds get when they've caught a grown-up in something half amused, half checking. Sorry, bud. Long morning at work. Did the generator break again? Something like that. Did Earl say a bad word? Earl says bad words every day, Tyler. It's like a hobby for him. I know. That's why I asked. Marcus laughed. It came out before he could stop it. He didn't know he had a laugh in him this afternoon. Tyler grinned, pleased with himself, and went back to telling him about Hercules, the bearded dragon. They pulled into the driveway at 3:34. Marcus parked. Tyler unbuckled and grabbed his backpack and was halfway out the door when Marcus said, "Hold up, bud. Stay in the truck a sec." Tyler froze with one foot on the running board. Why? Just for a second. Daddy needs to check the mail. The mail's right there. We can both get the mail. I know. Humor me. What's humor me? It means do what your old man says without arguing for once in your life. Oh. Tyler slid back into the seat. Okay. Marcus got out. He shut the door. He walked to the mailbox at the end of the drive, the same mailbox he'd walked to 1,000 times, and he opened it, and he pulled out a handful of grocery store circulars and an electric bill, and he turned in a slow half-circle while he was doing it. 3 doors down on the right side of the street, a tan craftsman with a wide front porch. The porch had a rocking chair on it and a flag and a planter full of geraniums that somebody clearly watered. Marcus had waved at the man who lived there twice in 12 months. The man's name on the mailbox was D. Wheeler. Retired Master Chief Cross had said, 3 doors down, cameras on every approach to your driveway. Marcus had never even asked the man's first name. The front door of the Wheeler house opened just a few inches. A man in his late 60s stepped out onto the porch. Gray crew cut, blue denim shirt, a coffee mug in his hand. He raised the mug at Marcus slow and easy, the way a neighbor does. Marcus raised the electric bill back. The man went inside. Marcus walked back to the truck. Took you long enough, Tyler said. What are we, the post office? Watch your mouth. That's not even a bad word. It's the tone, bud. Come on, let's go inside. They went inside. Marcus locked the door behind them, which he did every day. He also turned the deadbolt, which he did every day. He also slid the chain, which he had not done once in 3 years. Tyler didn't notice. Tyler was already at the fridge. Dad, are we doing grilled cheese? It's Tuesday. We do grilled cheese on Tuesdays. We're doing grilled cheese. With the tomato soup. With the tomato soup. Yes. Marcus made the grilled cheese the way he always made it, butter on both sides of the bread, 2 slices of American on the inside, the pan on medium-low, because his wife had taught him that you cannot rush a grilled cheese, you cannot hurry it. You have to let it brown the way it wants to brown. Tyler sat at the kitchen table and did his math homework with a pencil in his fist, and his tongue sticking out of the corner of his mouth. And Marcus stood at the stove with a spatula in his hand and his back to his son and his mind 200 miles up the highway. Houston, River Oaks, a man in a dark coat who held his right shoulder too high. Dad. Yeah, bud. What's 9 times 7? 63. Are you sure? Bud, I have been sure of 9 times 7 since 1989. Mrs. Patterson said you should always check your work. Then check it. A pause. The sound of fingers counting. 63. Told you? Dad. Yeah, bud. Why's the chain on the door? Marcus didn't turn around. He kept his eyes on the grilled cheese. Just being careful, bud. Careful about what? There was a thing on the news about people stealing packages off porches. Figured I'd be safer than sorry. Oh. Tyler considered this. We didn't get a package. I know. So why's the chain on? Habit. Eat your soup. It's not poured yet. I'm getting to it. He poured the soup. He set the bowl in front of Tyler. He put the grilled cheese on a plate next to it. He sat down across from his son at the small kitchen table, and Tyler took a bite of grilled cheese, and the cheese stretched a long string between his mouth and the bread, and he laughed, and Marcus watched him, and somewhere in his chest a door he had been holding closed for 3 years started to come open. Bud. Chew first. Tyler chewed. Tyler swallowed. Tyler took a sip of soup. Yeah. I want to ask you something. Okay. You happy here? In this house, in this town, in your school, you happy? Tyler looked at him like he had just asked whether water was wet. Dad, yeah. You sure? I have Marcus T. and Hercules the bearded dragon, and Mrs. Patterson, and the second best hot lunch in the whole school district. Yes. What's the best? Westwood Elementary. They have a salad bar. A salad bar. With croutons, Dad. Croutons. Wow. But I don't want to go to Westwood. I want to stay here. Okay? Why are you asking? Marcus took a bite of his own grilled cheese and chewed it slowly to buy himself the 4 seconds he needed. Just checking on you, bud. That's a daddy's job. You don't usually check during dinner. Maybe I should start. Maybe. Tyler dipped a corner of his sandwich into the soup. Are you okay, Dad? The question came out small and plain, the way an 8-year-old asks something he doesn't really want the real answer to. Marcus reached across the table and put his hand over his son's small one. Tyler's hand was sticky with butter. Marcus didn't care. I'm okay, bud. I'm just tired. Long day. Was it the contractors? Marcus's hand went still on top of his son's. What? The contractors. At your work. You always say they're loud. Marcus exhaled. Just the contractors. The general daily contractors, not the ones from this morning. Tyler didn't know about the ones from this morning. Tyler was never going to know about the ones from this morning. Yeah, bud. It was the contractors. You should tell them to be quieter. I'll tell them, bud. They finished dinner. Tyler put his plate in the sink he'd gotten in the habit his mother's habit, and it had stuck, and went to take his bath. Marcus stood at the sink and washed the dishes by hand because the dishwasher had been broken for 2 months, and he hadn't gotten around to calling the repair guy. He dried the plates with a towel that had a faded picture of the Texas state flag on it. He put them away. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He took it out. The number was unknown. The message was 3 words long. He's on the move. Marcus stood very still in the middle of his kitchen. The phone buzzed again. Houston to Dallas, 4:12 p.m. A third buzz. Reyes. Marcus closed his eyes. Reyes had his number. Of course Reyes had his number. Reyes had probably had his number for 3 years and had simply never used it the way Reyes did everything with patience and economy, and the understanding that the right moment for a phone call is not the moment you want to make one, but the moment when not making it would cost more than making it. Reyes was making the call now. Marcus typed back with his thumb. Copy. Kids present. Need the night. The reply came in under 3 seconds. Understood. Wheeler has eyes. Sleep if you can. Call me 0600. Marcus put the phone back in his pocket. From the bathroom down the hall came the sound of his son singing the SpongeBob theme song at the top of his lungs. Badly, with most of the wrong words. Marcus stood there in his kitchen with a dish towel over his shoulder and a phone in his pocket and an open chain on his front door and a retired Master Chief named Wheeler watching his driveway from 3 doors down, And he listened to his 8-year-old butcher who lives in a pineapple under the sea. And he did the thing he had not let himself do in 3 years, which was to feel the full and exact weight of the life he had built. It was a good life. It was the only thing he had ever built that he was proud of. And it was going to have to hold together for one more night without him knowing whether it was going to hold together for the rest of his son's childhood. He took the dish towel off his shoulder. He folded it. He set it on the counter. He walked down the hall to the bathroom door, knocked twice, and said, "Bud, 10 more minutes, and then teeth." "Dad." "Yeah." "Can you read 2 chapters tonight instead of 1? Marcus put his hand flat on the bathroom door. He kept it there a second. "Yeah, Bud," he said. "I think we can do 2 chapters tonight." "Yes." He walked back to the living room. He sat down on the couch. He picked up the worn copy of Where the Red Fern Grows off the side table, and he opened it to the bookmark, which was a folded gas station receipt from January. He looked at the page for a long time without reading it. Then he reached into his back pocket and took out the folded piece of construction paper Tyler had handed him in the truck. He had forgotten about it. He had said he would look at it when they got home, and he had not looked at it. He unfolded it now. It was a drawing. Crayon. The kind an 8-year-old draws. A stick figure with sandy yellow hair on top of a stick figure, with sandy yellow hair on what looked like a tractor in front of a brown house. Above it, in big, careful, uneven letters, Tyler had written, "My dad is the best dad and he fixes everything." Marcus Jackson looked at that drawing for a long time. Then he folded it back up very carefully along the same lines Tyler had folded it. He put it in his shirt pocket over his heart where he could feel it. And he sat on the couch and waited for his son to come out of the bathroom in his Spider-Man pajamas with his hair wet and his teeth brushed and his book in his hand so that he could read him 2 chapters and tuck him in and turn off the light, and then go sit at the kitchen table in the dark and wait for the sun to come up on a day he had spent 3 years hoping would never come. The chain on the front door stayed on. Outside, 3 doors down, a porch light came on at the Wheeler house and stayed on. And the phone in Marcus's pocket sat quiet and waited the way phones do when the world is about to ask a man for everything he has left. Tyler came down the hall in his Spider-Man pajamas at 7:52, hair still damp. The book under one arm, a stuffed dog called Rooster under the other. Rooster had been Tyler's mother's idea. She'd bought it the day they brought Tyler home from the hospital, and the dog had survived 8 years of being dragged through every room of the house, and it was held together now mostly by love, and one careful stitch his mother had put in 3 months before she died. Tyler climbed up onto the couch next to Marcus and burrowed in under his arm. 2 chapters, he said. 2 chapters. Marcus opened the book. He started reading. His voice was lower than usual, slower, and Tyler didn't notice because Tyler was already half melted into his side, the way kids do when the day has used them up. Marcus read about the boy and the dogs and the woods, and somewhere in the middle of the 2nd chapter, Tyler's breathing changed, and Marcus kept reading anyway, because stopping would have woken him up, and because the sound of his own voice reading his son to sleep was the only thing in that house keeping the kitchen table conversation he was about to have at bay. He read to the end of the chapter. He closed the book. He sat there for a long minute with his sleeping son tucked against his ribs, and he did not move. Then, slow and careful, he slid one arm under Tyler's knees and the other behind his shoulders and stood up. Tyler, in his sleep, made a small sound and turned his face into his father's shirt. Marcus carried him down the hall, the way he had carried him 1,000 times. He laid him down on the bed. He pulled the covers up. He set Rooster in the crook of Tyler's arm where Rooster belonged. He stood over the bed for a moment, with his hand on his son's hair. "Good night, Bud," he whispered. Tyler didn't answer. Tyler was already gone. Marcus turned out the lamp. He pulled the door 3/4 shut the way Tyler liked it, leaving just enough light from the hall to keep the monsters honest. He walked back to the kitchen. He did not turn the kitchen light on. He sat down at the table in the dark, And he put his phone in front of him, and he waited. It was 8:11. The phone buzzed at 8:14. Update subject arrived, Dallas. Checked into private residence North Oak Cliff. 3 vehicles, 6 men, 1 female. Assessed as support not family. Marcus read it twice. 6 men. The number sat in his head the way numbers do when you've been trained to do math in the dark with no calculator. 6 men was a security detail. 6 men was a small protection element. 6 men plus a female assessed as support, possibly a nurse, possibly a girlfriend. Possibly somebody who answered the door for deliveries was how a man traveled when he wasn't sure how welcome he was in the neighborhood and had reasons to be cautious. It was not how a man traveled when he was leading an operation. It was how a man traveled when he was being held in place by an operation. That was interesting. Marcus typed back. Copy. Are we watching the house or the man? The reply came after a longer pause this time. Both. But the house is the question. Property deed is a Shell LLC. Shell LLC roots to a law firm in Miami. Law firm is one we've seen before. Marcus's fingers paused on the screen. Seen where? Karachi 2014. Tirana 2017. This law firm is how he moves money. Marcus sat back in the chair. The kitchen was quiet enough that he could hear the ice maker in the freezer working and the air conditioner clicking on, and somewhere down the hall, the soft sound of his son breathing. He looked at the phone. He looked at the chain on his front door, which was still on. He looked at the curtain over the sink, which was drawn. He typed, "Who else knows he's in Dallas?" The answer came fast. Us, not them. That was the part Marcus had been waiting to hear. They think he's still in Houston. Correct. The Houston location is still active. The staff is still there. The lights are still on. Someone is going to walk out to that mailbox tomorrow morning and pretend to be him. Marcus understood now. The man in the dark coat had moved early, without telling his own people, which meant the man in the dark coat did not entirely trust his own people, which meant the man in the dark coat was running, and the people protecting him in Dallas were not the people he had walked into Houston with 6 weeks ago, which meant somewhere between Houston and Dallas, a relationship had broken. A relationship breaking in this kind of work almost always meant a body had been left behind. Marcus typed, "Who did he leave in Houston?" The reply was a single word. Almeida. For a second, Marcus didn't understand. He'd been thinking of the man in the dark coat as Almeida. That was the name in the folder. That was the name on the Venezuelan passport, the name Cross had used. Then he understood. The man on the Venezuelan passport was named Hector Almeida. The man in the dark coat was not Hector Almeida. The man in the dark coat had been using Hector Almeida the way men like him always used somebody, a body double, a stooge, a man who looked enough like him to fool a long-lens photo from across a parking lot. And Hector Almeida had been good at his job for 6 weeks in a private clinic in River Oaks, getting his shoulder worked on holding the legend together, while the real man moved around in the background and made his arrangements. And then the real man had moved to Dallas, and Hector Almeida, who had served his purpose, who knew faces and routines and pieces of the truth, had been left in Houston with the lights still on and a maid still coming twice a week. And Hector Almeida was almost certainly dead. Marcus typed, "Houston body confirmed." Not yet. Working on it. But yes. He put the phone down on the kitchen table. He sat in the dark. He thought about a man named Hector Almeida, who had probably believed 6 weeks ago that he was getting paid a great deal of money to be the friendliest face in a private medical clinic in Texas. He thought about the way that man had probably been picked, the right shoulder, the right scar, the right walk. He thought about the moment sometime in the last 48 hours when a man Hector trusted had walked into his room with something in his hand, and Hector had not understood until it was too late. And he thought about the man in the dark coat, the real one, 11 years older now, who had looked into a camera as he stepped out of a car in River Oaks because he had wanted to be photographed. Wanted the photograph to circulate. Wanted certain people in the world, wanted Marcus's world to see it and to come for it. It had been bait. The whole thing had been bait. Marcus picked up the phone. He wanted us to see him. Yes. He wanted us in Houston. Yes. He's not in Dallas because he's running. He's in Dallas because Dallas is where he wants us to come. There was a pause. Longer than the others had been. When the answer came, Marcus could feel the weight of it through the screen. That is the working assumption. Yes. Marcus closed his eyes for a long moment. He typed. Why? The phone was quiet for a full minute. Then it buzzed. He wants the four of you in one place. He thinks he can finish what he started 11 years ago. He's wrong. But that's what he thinks. Marcus read the message twice. He put the phone down very carefully. He stood up from the kitchen table. He walked to the sink. He turned on the cold tap and let it run for a minute, and he ran his hands under it, and then he splashed it on his face. He stood with his hands flat on the counter and the water running and his head down. The four of you, Hennessy in Montana with a wife and 2 girls, Tate in Maine, Reyes somewhere in the dark, not retired and never had been, and him. The man in the dark coat had spent 11 years putting a list together. He'd lost his network, his money, his face. He'd had his body double take a bullet in his name. He'd put the 4 of them on a piece of paper somewhere, and he'd waited. He had been patient. He had been very, very patient. And now he had picked Texas because Texas was where Marcus was, and Marcus was the easiest of the 4 to bait. Because Marcus had a son. Marcus turned off the tap. He dried his hands on the dish towel with the Texas state flag on it. He walked back to the table. He sat down. He picked up the phone. He did not type. He scrolled instead to the picture he kept on his home screen. It was a photo from 2 summers ago. Tyler at the lake holding up a fish that was about the size of his hand, grinning at the camera with his front tooth still in. Marcus's wife had taken the picture. It was one of the last ones she'd taken before she got sick. He looked at it for a long time. Then he switched out of the photo and he typed a new message. You said he's wrong. Why? The answer came in 12 seconds. Because he thinks you're still the man he knew, and you are not that man anymore. You are a father, which makes you more dangerous than he can possibly understand. Marcus stared at the screen. He typed back. Reyes. Yes. How long have you been on this? 11 years. Why didn't you ever come get me? Another long pause. Because you were out, and out is sacred. You got out for her, and then you got out for him. I was not going to be the man who put you back in. I'm still not that man. Cross asked me 2 months ago, and I told him no. I told him to let you stay gone. Cross decided otherwise because Cross thinks he can protect the boy better with you in than with you out. I don't know if he's right. I just know he's decided, and I am not going to lie to you about the shape of it. Marcus closed his eyes. He felt something in his chest he hadn't felt in years. It wasn't anger. He could not be angry at Reyes. You could not be angry at a man who 11 years later was still picking up the phone and telling you the truth about who had decided what. He typed, Am I in? The phone was quiet for 15 seconds. That is your decision, not mine, not Cross's, yours. What's your honest recommendation? Another long pause. Marcus could almost see Reyes on the other end somewhere in a hotel room, or a parked car, or a kitchen of his own, looking at the screen and choosing his words. Marcus. If you stay out, he will come to you anyway. He will not find the same man he left behind. He will find a father in a house with a chain on the door and a son asleep down the hall. And I have watched you for 12 months from a longer distance than Cross. And I can tell you something I don't think Cross understands. The father is harder than the operator ever was. The father will do things the operator wouldn't have. That means you think I can do it from here. I think you can do anything from anywhere. The question is whether you can live with the cost of doing it from here, or whether you need to do it, where Tyler will never see it. Only you know that. I can't know it for you. Marcus put the phone face down on the table. He sat in the dark a long time. He thought about his wife. He thought about her in the hospital the last week, when she could still talk a little, and he had been holding her hand and she had said, "Promise me," and he had said yes, and she had said, "Promise me you won't disappear into it again," and he had said yes, and she had said, "Promise me he gets a normal life," and he had said yes, and she had said, "Promise me you'll be at his graduation," and he had not been able to say yes to that one right away, because the doctors had told him already that there were certain promises a man should not make on a night like that, and she had squeezed his hand and said, "Say it anyway. Marcus, just say it," and so he had said yes. He had said yes to all of it. He had spent 3 years keeping every single one of those yeses. But he could not keep them all from this kitchen table. He understood that now. He had understood it the second he saw the photograph in Cross's folder, even though he hadn't let himself say it out loud. The man in the dark coat was not going to leave Texas without putting a hand on his son's life one way or the other. He might not put it directly. He might not even put it personally. But there were 6 men with him in Dallas right now, and there were probably more on the way. And the geometry of it was the geometry of it. A man who had spent 11 years putting a list together did not leave the list unfinished because somebody was being polite. Marcus picked up the phone. He typed slowly. "Here is what I will do." He stopped. He thought. He started again. Tyler stays here. Tyler stays in school. Tyler goes to sleep in his bed every night this week, and every night next week, and every night forever. That is the line. Everything else is negotiable. That is not. Understood. Wheeler stays 3 doors down. Understood. The deputy in the school lot stays. The bus stays. The woman with the golden retriever stays. Whatever else you and Cross have built around him stays. And if I find out that one of them is the wrong kind of eyes, I will handle that myself. Understood. All of it is ours. On my word. Then I am in. The phone went quiet. Marcus could feel Reyes on the other end of it. He could feel the small, bone-deep pause of a man receiving an answer he had been hoping not to need. Then the phone buzzed. Copy. Welcome back, brother. Marcus closed his eyes. He typed. One more thing. Go. He comes to Texas. He does not get closer than Dallas. He does not get within 100 miles of my son's school. That is the other line. Cross needs to hear it. Tate needs to hear it. Hennessy. When you wake him up in the morning, needs to hear it. We end this in Dallas. We do not let it walk south. The reply came almost instantly. That was always the plan. Marcus put the phone down. He sat in the dark for a long time. He could feel the construction paper drawing in his shirt pocket against his heart, the small, careful folded weight of it. He took it out. He unfolded it. He looked at the 2 stick figures on the tractor and the brown house and the careful, uneven crayon letters. My dad is the best dad and he fixes everything. He folded it again. He put it back in his pocket. He walked down the hall to Tyler's room. He pushed the door open 3/4 of the way he always left it. The hall light fell across the bed. Tyler was on his side with Rooster tucked under his chin and his mouth open a little and a line of drool starting at the corner of his lip. He was completely, perfectly, blessedly asleep. Marcus stood in the doorway. "Bud," he whispered, just for himself. Tyler didn't stir. "Daddy's gonna fix something for you that you don't even know is broken, and you're never gonna have to know about it. Not when you're 8, not when you're 18, not when you're 40. You're gonna grow up thinking your old man was just the maintenance guy who fixed generators. And that's fine. That's better than fine. That's the whole point." He stood there another minute. Then he closed the door 3/4 of the way and walked back to the kitchen. The phone buzzed once more. Meeting 0600, Cross's office. Tate flies in overnight. Hennessy drives down tomorrow. We will have a plan by noon. Marcus typed back. Copy. I'll be there. He put the phone face down on the table. He sat in the dark kitchen of his own house in a quiet town in Texas with his son asleep down the hall and a chain on his door, and a retired master chief watching his driveway from 3 doors down, and a woman with a golden retriever who walked a route every afternoon at 3:22, and a deputy in a school parking lot every day at 2:50. And somewhere 200 miles up the highway in a house owned by a shell company, routed through a law firm in Miami, a man in a dark coat with a stiff right shoulder was unpacking a suitcase in a bedroom that was not his, surrounded by 6 men who did not entirely belong to him, waiting for 4 other men to come and find him, so that he could finish a piece of work he had started 11 years before. He was going to get his wish. He was going to get a great deal more than his wish. And the man who was going to give it to him was at that very moment sitting at a kitchen table, with a folded crayon drawing in his shirt pocket and a cooling cup of coffee in front of him that he hadn't remembered making. Watching the digital clock on the microwave roll over from 9:58 to 9:59, and waiting with the patience he had thought he'd given up forever for the sun to come up. The microwave clock rolled to 4:59 and Marcus Jackson was already dressed. He'd slept maybe 2 hours in pieces on the couch with the front door in his line of sight and his phone face up on the coffee table. He'd showered at 4:15. He'd shaved with the same razor he used every morning in the same bathroom, in the same mirror. The face that looked back at him was the face of a maintenance man who fixed generators at a tactical training facility in Texas. He waited to see if it would change in the mirror. It didn't. That was the part that surprised him. He'd expected to see the other man come back, the man from before, the man with the trident. He'd expected the face to harden the eyes to go somewhere cold, but the face in the mirror was just his face, a father's face, tired, quiet, the same face that had read Where the Red Fern Grows to his son the night before. Then he understood. Reyes had been right. The father was the operator now. They were the same man. There was nothing left to come back to because nothing had ever truly left. He turned off the bathroom light and walked down the hall. He cracked Tyler's door 3/4 of the way. Tyler was on his back now, mouth open, Rooster on the pillow next to his head. Marcus stood there a long minute. He didn't go in. He didn't kiss the boy's forehead the way some part of him wanted to, because if he did, and Tyler stirred and asked him where he was going, he wasn't sure he could lie. So he stood in the doorway, and he watched his son's chest rise and fall, and he made his promise again in the silence between his ribs, the same way he'd made it 3 years before at his wife's grave. I'll be back tonight, bud. I'll be back tonight, and I'll be back the night after that, and I'll be back every night until I'm 100 years old. That is the deal. I have not changed the deal. He closed the door 3/4 of the way. He walked to the kitchen. He poured the coffee from the thermos into the travel mug. He picked up his keys. He looked at the chain on the front door for a second. Then he slid it off, because Wheeler was watching from 3 doors down, and a chain on a door doesn't stop. The right kind of man and his son needed to be able to walk through that door at 7:20 to catch his bus without his old man's paranoia complicating his morning. He stepped out onto the porch. He pulled the door shut behind him. He heard the deadbolt catch. 3 doors down the porch light was still on at the Wheeler house. As Marcus walked to his truck, the front door of that house opened, and the gray crew-cut man in the denim shirt stepped out onto the porch with his coffee mug. He raised the mug in the dark. Marcus raised a hand back. Neither one of them said a word. Wheeler had the watch. Marcus got in the truck. The drive to Briarwood at 5 in the morning took 9 minutes. The roads were almost empty. He passed the elementary school dark, the carpool line, empty, the playground asleep. He passed the Methodist church where his wife had been buried, and he did not look at the sign because he'd looked at it 1,000 times, and he didn't need to look at it now. He kept his eyes on the road. The gate at Briarwood was open. The guard on the post, a heavy man in his 60s named Hollis, whom Marcus had said good morning to every day for a year, looked up from his coffee and something in his face was different this morning. There was a small, careful nod. A new kind of nod. Hollis had known. The whole time. Of course Hollis had known. Marcus drove past without comment. He parked the truck in the same spot he parked it every day by the equipment shed. He walked across the gravel yard, the same yard where 20 hours earlier, Cole Havens had been on his back with Marcus's boot on his throat, and he went into the admin building. Patricia at the front desk did look up this time. "Mr. Jackson." "Ma'am?" "They're waiting for you. End of the hall conference room." "Thank you, ma'am." He walked down the hall. He did not knock. He opened the door. 3 men were already in the room, standing around a long table with a paper map of North Texas spread across it and a laptop open at one end. Cross was the closest in khakis and a polo shirt. The man next to him was about Marcus's age, lean sharp, his black hair starting to gray at the temples. Reyes, who Marcus had not seen in person in 11 years, and who looked exactly the same except for the gray. Across the table, a heavy-set man with a red beard and a wool flannel shirt, Tate. He must have come straight from the airport. He had a coffee in one hand and a plain manila folder in the other. "Ma'am." There was a 4th chair empty. That would be for Hennessy, who was driving down from Montana and would be in by noon. Marcus stopped just inside the door. For a second, nobody spoke. Then Reyes set his pen down on the map. "Marcus." "Reyes." "You look old." "You look dead." "Yeah, well." Reyes almost smiled. "That's been the working theory." Tate walked around the table and stuck out his hand. Marcus took it. Tate's grip was the same as it had been in 2014. Too hard, too long, the way men shake hands when they've not been sure they'd ever shake again. "Brother." "Tate." "How's the boy?" "He's good. He's 8. 8. Tate shook his head. "God almighty. 8. "Sit down, gentlemen," Cross said. He didn't say it like a commander. He said it like a man who had a great deal to do in not very much time. "We start in 2 minutes. Tate, give him the brief." They sat. What followed was the cleanest hour of work Marcus had been in a room for in 3 years. Tate ran the brief. Reyes filled in the gaps. Cross asked the right questions at the right times and didn't ask the wrong ones. The map of North Texas got marked up in 3 colors. The house in North Oak Cliff got photographed from 4 angles by a drone Reyes was running with a contractor in Plano whose name was not mentioned. The 6 men with the man in the dark coat got named 3 of them anyway. The other 3 were unknowns and would stay unknowns. The female assessed as support turned out to be a registered nurse from Caracas who had been in the country on a tourist visa since February. By 6:50, they had a plan. By 7:15, they had a backup plan. By 7:30, Hennessy called in from a gas station outside Amarillo and got read in over a secure line, and his only question was, "Do we move tonight or do we wait?" And the answer from Cross was, "We move tonight." And Hennessy said, "Copy, see you at 1900," and hung up. At 7:40, Marcus stood up. "Where you going?" Tate asked. "School bus comes at 7:20. I missed it. Tyler will already be on it. But I told him last night I'd be in his lunchbox." "You'd be what?" "I write him a note every couple of days. Stick it in his lunchbox. He likes it. I haven't done one this week. I'm going to do one now and run it over to the school office before homeroom." The 3 men at the table looked at him. Cross finally said, "You have time." "I'm making time." Reyes nodded slowly. "Good, do that. We've got an hour before the next call." Marcus walked back down the hall to Patricia's desk. He asked her for a piece of paper and a pen. Patricia gave him both without a word. He sat down in one of the lobby chairs and he wrote, "Hey bud, sorry I missed the bus this morning. Big day at work. Some of the contractors are being loud again. Yeah, the same ones. I'll tell them to be quieter like you said. You behave for Mrs. Patterson. Tell Marcus T. I said hi to Hercules. Tonight is taco night, not Tuesday grilled cheese night. I know that I haven't lost my mind. I'll be home for dinner. I love you the most. Dad. P.S. 9 times 7 is 63. I checked it again just for you. He folded it. He put it in his shirt pocket behind the construction paper drawing. He drove to the school. He walked into the front office. The receptionist there knew him and smiled. He asked her to put the note in Tyler Jackson's lunchbox in Mrs. Patterson's room. She said she'd walk it over personally. He thanked her. He left. When he got back to his truck, he sat behind the wheel for a moment. Then he started the engine and drove back to Briarwood, and he did not think about the note again because he had already put it where it needed to be, and a man in his line of work had to learn to let go of a thing once he'd put it down. He had learned that lesson a long time ago. He had not forgotten it. Hennessy arrived at 6:52 that evening. He was a tall, lanky man with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead and the calm, slightly tired look of a man who had spent the last 7 years teaching tourists how to tie a fly. He hugged Marcus once hard and said, "Brother," and Marcus said, "Brother." And that was the whole conversation because there was no time for any other one. By 8, they were on the road. Though they did not go in 4 cars. They went in 2. Cross stayed at Briarwood. He would run the operation from the conference room with the laptop and the drone feed and the secure line. Tate and Hennessy rode in the lead vehicle, a plain dark Suburban that belonged to a security contractor out of Fort Worth. Marcus and Reyes rode in the second one. Marcus drove. Reyes navigated. They did not talk much. About halfway up to Dallas somewhere on a dark stretch of I-35E, Reyes finally said, "Tyler, get the note." "Don't know. School day's over. I'll find out tomorrow." "He'll have gotten it." "Probably." A long, quiet stretch. Then Reyes said, "My daughter's 17. Marcus glanced over. "I didn't know you had a daughter." "You wouldn't have. I didn't have her when you knew me. Her mother is in Albuquerque. The girl lives with her." Reyes paused. "I see her 4 weekends a year. I have seen her 4 weekends a year for 14 years. That is the deal her mother and I made, and it is the deal I have kept." "That's hard, brother." "It is what it is. The point I am making is this." Reyes turned his head and looked at Marcus in the dashboard light. "I have spent 14 years thinking I made the wrong choice. Thinking I should have gotten out the way you got out. Thinking that if I had, I'd have a daughter who calls me Dad instead of Reyes. And then last night I sat in a hotel room in Plano, and I read your messages, and I thought about your boy, and I thought about my girl, and I realized something." "What?" "Both of us are doing the same job. You're doing it in a kitchen with grilled cheese and a chain on the door. I'm doing it on a phone in a hotel room. We are both every day fighting for the same thing. The shape of it is different. The work is the same." Marcus drove for a minute without answering. "I never thought you made the wrong choice, Reyes." "I know you didn't. I'm telling you what I thought." "I know." "I needed to say it once." "Okay." Another long quiet. Then Reyes said, "When this is done, I'm going to call my daughter." "What are you going to say?" "I'm going to ask her if she wants to come fishing in Montana with Hennessy's girls this summer." "She'll say yes." "You don't know that." "I know that." Reyes almost smiled. They drove the rest of the way in silence. What happened in North Oak Cliff at 2240 that night is a story Marcus Jackson would never in his life tell anyone, including his son. The official version, which appeared in a brief item in the Dallas Morning News 2 days later, was that an explosion of some kind had taken place at a private residence in a quiet neighborhood, that there had been multiple fatalities, that the authorities were investigating, and that there was no apparent threat to the public. The home was reported to be owned by a Florida-based holding company. Federal agencies declined to comment. The unofficial version, which existed in the heads of 4 men and 1 commanding officer, and would remain there for the rest of their lives, was a great deal cleaner than the news suggested. Reyes had been right about the geometry. The man in the dark coat had baited them to Dallas because he believed he had the home field advantage there. He did not. The home field advantage had belonged to the four of them. From the moment the property deed had touched a Miami law firm, Reyes had been watching for 9 years. By the time the second-floor bedroom light went out in the house in North Oak Cliff at 2158, every approach to the property was already covered. By 2220, the six-man detail had been quietly and bloodlessly relieved of their weapons and their consciousness in that order. 3 of them would wake up in a county hospital with bad headaches and no memory of how they'd gotten there. The other 3 would wake up eventually in federal custody. The nurse from Caracas would walk out of the house at 2231 on her own 2 feet with her hands up, and would later be very helpful to a number of people whose job it was to ask her questions. That left the man in the dark coat. He was sitting at a kitchen island in the back of the house, in a silk robe, eating a piece of cold chicken with his fingers, when the back door opened without a sound. Marcus came in alone. That had been the plan. Tate and Hennessy held the perimeter. Reyes covered the front. Marcus went in alone. Because the 4 of them had agreed in the conference room at Briarwood at 7:22 that morning, that the man in the dark coat had earned the right after 11 years of running to look at exactly one face when the running ended, and the 4 of them had agreed without much debate on whose face it should be. The man at the kitchen island looked up. He saw Marcus. Why, he didn't move. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't shout. He set the piece of chicken down very carefully on the marble countertop, and he picked up a paper napkin and he wiped his fingers one by one. "Jackson," he said. His English was very lightly accented. It always had been. "Yes," Marcus said. "You came alone." "I came in alone. There's a difference, of course." The man smiled faintly. The scar at the corner of his mouth pulled the smile sideways. "The other 3? Outside." "All 3. All 3. The man nodded slowly. He looked down at his hands on the counter. His right shoulder was high and stiff, the way Marcus remembered the way the photograph had shown. "I underestimated something," he said. "What?" "How much harder you would be once you had a child. I had a theory it would be the other way. A lot of men have had that theory. They've all been wrong." "Yes." The man looked up. "I am understanding that now." For a moment, neither of them moved. The man in the dark coat, and he was not actually wearing the coat. Now it was on the back of a chair across the room, but in Marcus's head, he would always be the man in the dark coat, looked at Marcus across the kitchen island, and Marcus looked back at him. "Your boy," the man said. "Tyler." Marcus's face did not change. "I never went near him, Jackson. I want you to know that. I had men who could have. I had opportunities. I never gave the order. I want that on the record." "There's no record here." "There is in your head. Put it there. I never went near him." "Why not?" The man tilted his head a little. The faint smile came back. "Because I have a son, too." Marcus said nothing. "He is 41 years old. He lives in Caracas. He sells real estate. He does not know what I do. He has never known what I do. His mother died 10 years ago without ever telling him. I have not seen him in 8 years. I will not see him again. That is the cost of the life I chose." The man shrugged slightly. "I do not believe in punishing other men's children for the lives those men chose. Whatever else I am not that. I want that on the record." "It's on the record. Thank you." A pause. "Are you here to take me, Jackson, or are you here to end it?" "I'm here for whichever one you choose." The man considered. "If I go with you," he said, "I will be in a federal prison for the rest of my natural life." "Yes. And in that prison, eventually my son in Caracas will read in a newspaper about a man named Almeida or some other name, and he will not know it is me, and his life will go on as it has." "Yes. And if I go the other way, then you go the other way." "And the news says what?" "That a holding company's house had an explosion. Bad gas line. Tragic. No survivors." The man in the dark coat closed his eyes for a long second. When he opened them, he looked smaller than he had a minute before. Jackson. Yes. I am tired. I know. 11 years is a long time to run from 4 men. It is. I had thought when this moment came that I would have something clever to say. I do not. I find I have nothing clever at all. You don't need anything clever. No, I suppose not. He sat very still for a moment. Then he reached slowly enough that Marcus could see every inch of the movement into the pocket of his robe, and he took out a small folded piece of paper. He slid it across the marble counter. My son's address, he said. In Caracas. If you would, when this is over, a letter. From a man he doesn't know, saying his father loved him, that is all. No details, no truth he cannot use, just that one line. Will you do that for me, Jackson? Marcus looked at the folded paper. Wow. He thought about the construction paper drawing in his shirt pocket. He thought about Tyler in his Spider-Man pajamas. He thought about a 41-year-old man in Caracas selling real estate who had never been told what his father was and who would have to spend the rest of his life believing his father had been someone he wasn't. He picked up the piece of paper. He put it in his shirt pocket behind the drawing. I'll do it. Thank you. The man in the dark coat exhaled once long and slow, like a man setting down a weight he had been carrying a long time. The other way, then, he said. I think the other way. Marcus nodded. Close your eyes, he said. The man closed his eyes. Ciao. What happened next was clean, and it was quiet, and it was not the kind of thing Marcus Jackson would think about often in the years that followed, because a man who did the kind of work he had done knew that the only way to keep doing it was to not carry it home. He had not carried it home in 15 years on the teams. He did not carry this one home either. He walked out the back door at 2246. Reyes met him at the corner of the property. Reyes did not ask. Marcus did not say. The two of them walked to the Suburban where Tate and Hennessy were waiting. Tate looked at Marcus's face, and Tate nodded, and Hennessy put the vehicle in gear, and they drove south. The Dallas Morning News story ran on Thursday. Marcus was at his kitchen table on Thursday morning drinking his coffee watching Tyler eat a bowl of cereal when the news came on the little radio he kept on the windowsill. The announcer read the item about the gas line explosion in North Oak Cliff. Tyler looked up. That's sad, Dad. It is, Bud. Why do houses blow up? Bad pipes sometimes, not very often. Don't worry about it. Our pipes are good. Our pipes are fine. Promise. Marcus reached across the table and ruffled the cowlick. I promise, Bud. Tyler went back to his cereal. 3 weeks later, Marcus mailed a letter to an address in Caracas. The letter was 3 lines long. It was unsigned. It said in Spanish that Tate's wife had translated for him. I am writing on behalf of someone who knew your father. He wanted you to know that he loved you very much until the last hour of his life. That is all he asked me to say. Marcus paid for the postage in cash at a post office in a town 200 miles from his own, and he did not think about the letter again. A month after that, Marcus walked into Cross's office at Briarwood and put an envelope on the desk. What's this? My resignation. Cross looked at it. From maintenance or from us? Both, sir. Marcus. Sir. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. Cross nodded slowly. Tyler. Tyler. What are you going to do, Ed? There's a hardware store in town for sale. The old man who owns it wants to retire. I've been talking to him. I'm going to buy it. A hardware store? Yes, sir. You, a hardware store? Yes, sir. Cross looked at him for a long moment. Then he stood up. He walked around the desk. He held out his hand. Marcus took it. You're a good man, Marcus Jackson. I'm a man who's trying, sir. That's all anybody is. Marcus left the envelope on the desk. He walked out of the admin building. He walked across the gravel yard one last time, past the spot where Cole Havens had gone down, past the equipment shed, past the south berm, where the generator was running smooth now, because he had finally gotten around to fixing the air filter the week before. He drove home. He picked Tyler up from school at 3:15. 5 months after that, on a Saturday in October, Marcus Jackson opened Jackson's Hardware on Main Street with Tyler standing next to him in a brand new apron 3 sizes too big, holding a pair of scissors cutting a red ribbon his Aunt Sue had tied across the front door. Linda the bus driver came. Earl from Briarwood came with his wife. Hollis the gate guard came. Wheeler from 3 doors down came in his denim shirt with his coffee mug. Tate flew down from Maine, and Hennessy drove down from Montana with both of his daughters, who Tyler immediately decided he was in love with both of them equally. Reyes was not there in person, but a card came in the mail with no return address, and the card said, "Brother, I called my daughter. She said yes." R. The man in the dark coat was not there, of course. But somewhere in the hours of that bright Texas Saturday, while Marcus stood at the cash register ringing up his first customer, old Mr. Henderson. Buying a box of 3-inch deck screws, Marcus put his hand in his shirt pocket and felt beside the soft folded square of his son's drawing, the worn folded square of a different piece of paper. The Caracas address. He had carried it for 9 months. He carried it still. He always would. A man brings home what he chooses to bring home, and he brings home what is asked of him. And sometimes those are the same thing, and sometimes they are not. Marcus Jackson rang up Mr. Henderson's deck screws. He gave him his change. He told him to come back if anything else broke. He looked across the store past the racks of paint and the bins of nails, and he saw his 8-year-old son standing on a stepladder helping Hennessy's older daughter reach a roll of blue masking tape on the top shelf. And the boy was laughing, and the laugh was the same laugh his mother used to laugh, and Marcus Jackson stood behind his counter in his own store, in his own town with his own son, safe and laughing 20 feet away from him. And he understood for the first time in his entire life what it had all been for. He had given his final warning 11 months before, on a gravel lot in front of 6 men who had not understood who he was. He had given it once. He was never going to have to give it again. And Tyler Jackson, 8 years old, missing a front tooth, growing up in a quiet Texas town, with a father who fixed things, and a hardware store with his name on the door, would live the rest of his life, never knowing that his old man had once walked through a back door in Dallas, to keep a promise he'd made to a dying woman 3 years earlier. That was the deal Marcus had made. That was the deal Marcus had kept. And that was the deal Marcus would keep every single day for the rest of his life.